Okay, success. All right, we are going to get started with our user meeting. It is October. Can you believe it? I am still having trouble. It is good to see your faces again. Some of you meet you, and hope you all have been doing well. All right, let's get going. And just a reminder, you can put a chat in if you want to specifically go over something, or always unmute yourself. We're a small enough group, we can just chat as well. So please feel free to hop in. All right, so today we do have a few different updates to go through. So we've got annual privacy training and the privacy doc, a little update on the CV caper and the CE elements, and then the longitudinal system analysis. All right. Oh, and I did not mute you because we're not on GoToMeeting. All right, system updates. Let's go through those updates. So first off, thank you all so much. We are done with our annual privacy training. Orange finished first in terms of completing those. So thank you all so much for responding to those emails. So let's dive into our privacy document changes and updates. I wanted to go into these with a little bit more detail than that general update training, and field any questions that you all might have. So there were a few changes with our documents. The first and kind of the foundational document for our privacy setup with HMIS is our HMIS policy and procedures document. So I want to go over these specific changes or updates. Mostly they're clarification, but there's a couple changes I want to review. And then we'll look at the kind of documents that are based off this that have some updates as well. So first up, we have that sharing may include data collected in the future, and now also historical data. So for Orange, y'all haven't had sharing in HMIS before. So this isn't really a change as opposed to a little tip about how sharing can work from now on. So it was under some previous procedural requirements, we could not add an agency to a sharing group and have them kind of join that existing sharing with all the sharing that had happened before. So what this did was it caused a lot of issues with coordinated entry sharing in other communities, where it was, if someone was a new coordinated entry access point, they couldn't see that someone had already been to the other coordinated entry access point in the community, or already had rapid rehousing services from, XYZ agency. And it's counter to the purpose of coordinated entry sharing, and it's also not helpful for serving the client, because we do want to know what services they've had before, so you can ask the right questions and maybe adjust referrals and positioning the client for services. So we have to change the policy and procedures document to allow flexibility here. So it's not that we're always going to share historical data when there's HMIS sharing. It's that there's some flexibility, so that with communities, we can talk through the potential for historical sharing, and in particular, we'll likely want to do that for coordinated entry based sharing, which is most of our sharing now. But so we wanted to let you know that when clients are consenting to sharing from now on, right, that it may connect to some historical services. That's that change there. Any questions about that? It's a little different since you haven't been sharing before, but we're getting started on some sharing coming up. Okay. Another change was that the verbal ROI is now valid for 1 full year. It had previously been 2 weeks or 3 months during the pandemic, but now it'll just have the same expiration date as a paper ROI. Now, this isn't to say that the paper ROI isn't, superior. It is. We still want a paper signed ROI. And at the first in-person meeting with the client, we expect a signed client statement, that signed paper ROI. But as more services are being done remotely, that's being reflected in this policy about verbal ROI. Okay, and then the last few of these are more clarifications, I would say maybe even corrections of the policy and procedures as opposed to like policy changes. But I want to make sure that you know what our kind of founding documents are saying. So in our policy and procedures, it previously said that that you may not download reports with personally identifying information, or PII, but that is not true. You need to access personal information for clients, whether that's for by name list or just printing off a file for the ESG office. There's a lot of really allowable uses for personally identifying information for your client and for delivering those services. It's just that we want to make sure it's shredded after use and it's kept securely, right? So HMIS data is the most secure when it's in HMIS, not printed off on a paper that can be left somewhere, right? So that language was just updated to make sure to say that you may download reports with personally identifying information, but please secure it. That should be shredded after use and kept secure while using that information. All right, and we also clarified how to search the clients in HMIS. So just detailing those steps for using a first name and last name, few initials, and vice versa, or the last four of the social of the client. Just making sure that it's clear how to search for clients in HMIS. And along with that, acknowledging the procedures to follow equal access rule around respecting the name of clients identifying as trans, but the name that they're giving you is their real name and does not need documentation to support that. We know for trans clients in particular that updating documentation can be really difficult, especially depending on where they were born, and that may actually be one of the services that they need your support for. So that shouldn't be required for your HMIS profile at start. And then lastly, we clarified some language to distinguish permanent supportive housing annual reviews, which review eligibility and income in particular, versus our HMIS annual assessments. These annual assessments are required annually as well, but on a slightly different calendar. So HMIS annuals are required at the anniversary of the day that they were accepted into the program, as opposed to the permanent supportive housing annual review, which looks at when they moved into a unit. So it's a slightly different calendar, and it's important to distinguish that. All right, any questions? Okay.
Yeah, I got a question about that date.
Yeah.
So let's say a member moved into permanent supportive housing into a unit, but that unit didn't work out. So they moved out before the year was over, 9 months in. So then they moved into another place. Is it 1 year from the date of the second place, or 1 year from the date of the first place, and then you do it again 1 year from the date of the second place?
So just to clarify in terms of what that is, the HMIS annual assessment is always from the project start date. So when you move out of a unit for rapid rehousing or permanent support housing, you're going to actually exit the client and start a new intake for them. So there's going to be a second row in HMIS on that entry exit tab. And so then the annual will calculate from that new kind of refresh of the housing navigation and housing search. Does that?
Okay, I get that part, but I want to know that, because life is messy. So I exited them from the emergency shelter and I enrolled them in PSH and moved them into housing. But that particular housing did not last for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
So they exited housing. We gave them the exit date. There was a month, and then we moved them to another place. When is the annual assessment? Is it a year from the date they were housed at the first place? Or do I not do it and wait until they've been in a place for a year? Or do I do two?
It is a year from the day after they moved out of their first place. So it's all about that project start date.
Okay.
And so the clock starts over when you begin that new entry.
Okay, so let me tell you what I think I know, just to make sure I'm right here. So I enrolled someone in PSH on January 1st. On January 5th, they moved in to an apartment. They moved out of that apartment because it didn't work for them on July 1st. I exited them on July 1st. We looked for a new place. On August 1st, we found a new place and they moved in. When do I do their first PSH assessment?
Right. So they're, just to clarify, their annual assessment would be, you said they moved out on July 1st, so within 30 days plus or minus July 2nd, 2021.
So when they moved out, not when they moved in.
Well, because
they enrolled
you start
on
a new
January
intake.
1st.
You start a new intake, right? So there's,
So that first period, that first 6 months period, they didn't live anywhere long enough to need the PSH 1 year assessment. But if they move into another place and they stay there for a year, then a year later, they do need the PSH assessment. That's completely separate than the HMIS assessment.
Oh, sorry. I'm only speaking about HMIS annual assessments. I want to be really clear about that.
Oh, I'm asking about PSH.
No, I can't answer that. So the annual assessment in HMIS is totally separate from your PSH annual review for income requirements.
Okay.
It is completely separate.
Mm-hmm.
They are divorced entirely, and I have zero authority to speak about PSH annual reviews for income verification. I can tell you like what I've heard based on confusion around this, but yeah.
So is there clarity coming about that, do you think, or we'll just?
I think it's pretty clear. I just want the PSH annual review is based on move-in date to a unit, right?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's true, but I would clarify with HUD if you want to confirm that through AAQ. It's the annual assessment in HMIS that is based off a start date in HMIS.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So if I, I was gonna.
Yeah, I know how to do an HMIS.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know
Yeah.
you know how to do it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show the layers of the entry exit here that like you would have 2 or 3 rows of data here for your shelter, for the first time housing, for the second time housing, and the clock restarts on each of those project start dates. Okay. Sorry for
Thanks.
that. Did that clarify or did we confuse more?
I was just asking something different, but yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Sorry,
Okay.
this is Suzanne. Okay,
Yeah, hey.
so I'm totally confused now. So,
Great.
okay, so when we do rapid rehousing, so when I enter them in HMIS, I've been entering them as of the date that we actually do the intake with them. And then my year has always been when that paperwork, the day before, like, so January 1st, then December 31st, I would have had to do a reassessment. Is that not correct?
No, it sounds like you're correct. It just depends on if, with permanent supportive housing, there's, it's more likely to have someone kind of moving in and out of a unit and be continuing support for them. And so it can get a little more confusing. But if your client isn't moving in and out, then your annual calendar is kind of on the same schedule. So if you connect with them in January, you should do the annual assessment in HMIS in December. That sounds right to me.
Okay, regardless of when they actually move in somewhere.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
In permanent supportive housing, there's a specific review required based on a move-in date, but that is based on HUD funding of permanent supportive housing. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So I will just, oh, how can I get the chat open? Chat can't open up. Okay. Just to let you know, you can go to mcceh.org/HMIS/training, and then down here to our housing moving guide, in case you do need to exit a client who needs different housing and you still want to serve them. So just a heads up that guide is in there. All right. So based on that change with the visibility for historical data, we did need to clarify some language in the ROI. And then we also wanted to clarify some language in the paper ROI around data usage, in particular because we're getting more requests for information for research purposes, for reports. And so we wanted to clarify that. So in our introduction, there's four different sections of our ROI, the introduction, and then section 1, 2, and 3, which outlines specific information governed by certain rules and a different section to consent to. In the introduction, we clarified that the information collected on clients is for both the client's direct benefit, say coordinating resources in a by name list meeting, and for their indirect benefits, such as learning more about the patterns of services in the community so that we can refine best practices, get more funding, right? Advocate for clients like the client we're specifically serving. So the benefit to the client can be very direct sometimes, but it can also be a little more indirect. for the kind of system that supports them. We also specifically link to and reference the privacy notice, which is the more detailed privacy policy that the release of information covers. So there's some specific paragraphs in the privacy notice about data usage. In particular, for right now, it covers the health and threats to health use of data, which can be potentially utilized during the pandemic, right? If for some reason you're, calling ahead to a doctor's office and they need to know something in order to serve the client for COVID symptoms, something like that, that would be covered under the data usage that's detailed in our privacy notice. There's also a paragraph there about research, and so that is that's covered by the privacy notice and our ROI. The advisory board does review research opportunities, so there's still kind of a centralized body that's like reviews and makes sure that folks are legit and following proper procedures to secure client data if they are using client level data. Okay, and then under the section 2 and 3, there's references now to historical data. And so it just specifically outlines for the client that by consenting, this may include service history data from HMIS. All right, any questions? Pausing for questions. Okay. All right. So you can, or you should rather, have printed new release of information copies. If you haven't yet, you can do that right now. Go online to ncceh.org/HMIS/admin, and then under our privacy and guidance documents, you'll find that release of information. This is also linked right here, and the PDF of these slides are on our HMIS user meeting page, ocpeh.org. I think it's org, not gov. So on that page, it's also posted. These changes for ROIs did not impact previous clients. It's just at the renewal of an annual or for new clients, you'll want to use this ROI. And then just a heads up as well, there's a slight update to our verbal ROI how-tos document that acknowledges the verbal ROI can last a year. And so just make sure that as you're recording those, you've got that end date for a year in the future. Again, you don't have to change verbal ROIs that may have already been recorded. And then these are some tools that you may find useful that have not changed, but it's a good time to lift these up and let you know that they're available for you. Okay, on to our next update. So for the ESG COVID funding, there's a special reporting period for this. It's due quarterly, and it's submitted by your HMIS lead agency, which is the data center, for all sub-grantees. So we're actually pulling data from Durham, Orange, and the balance of state. And we're submitting like 8 reports per quarter for quarterly and cumulative data by project type. And the first deadline is mid-October. So the ESG office, the state ESG office, is looking for that by the end of next week, I think. So just a heads up that we'll be submitting some data mid-October for ESG CVs, and that is only applies, of course, if you've actually served clients with this funding, right? Which not everyone has, but we have started to do that. And this first period is going to cover through September 30th, so just through last Wednesday. Sorry, my dog is having dreams. Just wanted to check on it. The new coordinated entry data element. You will be seeing these in the system, and I wanted to give you just a brief summary of what those are, and also tell you how to get some more information about these. It's most important for our coordinated entry access points, and I believe you guys have had a couple trainings now that integrate these elements, so that's the most important. But you will see these across the system, so I want to review, just introduce these elements to you. So there's current living situation, which will be collected by street outreach projects and coordinated entry projects. And this is very similar to prior living situation, which is where did the client stay last night? This question, current living situation, is where does the client stay when you interact with them? And so that is collected at any point in time with the client's journey, start, interim update, or exit. And it's just about, you know, what's going on with the client now. Are they literally homeless? Are they staying with a friend? Because we know that can change throughout your engagement with the client, particularly with outreach and coordinated entry projects. And then there's a coordinated entry assessment, which will record when an assessment is completed. In particular, this is how we'll record when a housing assessment like the VI SPDAT occurs. So that does impact more folks than just our, our brand new outreach and coordinated entry access projects. So a housing assessment right now is our VI SPDAT, and then crisis needs is more of that diversion conversation. So this just records when that occurs and what happened. Were they placed on the by name list? And then finally, we've got a coordinated entry event, and this records both the referrals for coordinated entry purposes, whether that's a referral for like a diversion or prevention resources, or a referral for shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, all of those kind of housing stabilization services. So you will be seeing these in HMIS and also on your paper forms. This is impacting all of us in HMIS. So while you've had your kind of coordinated entry specific training, it is good for all folks. We did hold a training on September 23rd. You can find that link posted online. And then we're also adding an abbreviated version to go through the elements to our Introduction to Data Elements training page. So there'll be a couple ways to do that. And finally, I think we'll circle back in a month, see how folks are going, how folks are doing, and hopefully be able to introduce a report that will utilize these new data elements. So to be continued is this conversation. In the meantime, please collect what you can, and all the new paper assessments have the appropriate data elements per project type. So the ESG office has those new forms. They were posted on the ESG site, and then they're also posted on our website. Okay, any questions about updated forms? So we want to let you know about some of the emails we've had in the last couple of weeks about longitudinal system analysis. We're working right now with you all to clean up this data, prepare the data, and make sure that we are submitting accurate and as complete as possible data to HUD at the beginning of November. But I want to make sure that we also know how this impacts the system and what we're really looking at. So let's first remind ourselves what the LSA is. So this is the Longitudinal System Analysis Report, and it's delivered to Congress each year to report on the extent and nature of homelessness in America. It combines several different sources of data. HMIS is just one of those. So it does pull annual data from HMIS and also includes the PIT and the HIC. You'll remember that's the point in time count and the housing inventory count. It also runs on the federal fiscal year from October to September. So it's important to remember they get to determine the year, and so it's running that data on their year. Officially, this visualizes progress of the strategic plan opening doors. And another thing to note is that it does include continuums of care nationwide. So this gives us a really good look at the whole country, I think territories too, and you know, the progress or challenges that the whole system is having. Okay, so 3 data sources, but HMIS is actually the largest data source, right? When you think about point in time, that's one night of data, and while it's very detailed and in-depth, it's just one night. HMIS is looking at all 365 or 66 nights, and so this is really important. It also looks a little differently at data than some other reports. We're looking at universal data elements down to the demographics, looking at disabling conditions, income, the location of clients, as well as some back-end data elements like project type and bedding unit inventories. So it's a very kind of robust, comprehensive report. This year, HUD has declared that they are collecting 2 fiscal years, so we're actually submitting twice as much data as we maybe initially thought we were in June. And so this is including fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020. You've got those specific dates right there. And this includes most project types in our system. So street outreach, emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. So all of those project types are included. And who among those project types, who between those dates are included, that's active clients during the reported period, meaning that they had an entry or an exit during that reporting period, and any continuous stays outside of the window. So going back, right, before October 1st, 2018, if someone stayed over that date, and then any days associated with any returns to homelessness in the past 3 years. So even looking at just these 2 fiscal years, it's a lot of data, but we're actually going even further back to incorporate some system performance measures. This process has a few different stages, rather. So first we prepare the data, and we're all working on this together now with some corrections. Then the HMIS lead agency submits that to HUD. Then HUD reviews the data with the data liaison team, and they actually maybe ask more questions of the CSC and the data center. So there's potentially some more back and forth in December. And then finally, they prepare that analysis and deliver it to Congress. Now, we've already submitted point in time and housing inventory count. That was in the spring. So we're just working right now on the LSA. And we are still waiting for the LSA report the specific report that will be used to submit data. However, we have a lot of tools to clean up the report given what we know, so we're using what we can now. Okay, so what impacts us most directly is this cleanup process. As mentioned, we're submitting fiscal year 19 and 20 together. The timeline for submission is early November. I'm really hoping for a solid deadline from HUD soon. So corrections at this time must be completed by the end of the month. So we're really hoping to wrap all this up by the end of October. So we're prepared for whether that submission deadline is November 1st or November 10th. We got some feedback and multiple waves was preferred. So we are sending 3 separate waves of data correction. But know that if data correction is not completed in the first wave or the second wave, it will be included in the next wave. So, in that sense, the deadline is a little bit flexible, but we still need you to look at those corrections. All right, so waves, here we've got wave 1 already hopefully done. We've looked at demographics, homeless history, other universal data elements for just some general data quality and completeness for that wave. If anything wasn't able to be looked at, that'll be included in wave 2. You should have already received wave 2 last week as appropriate. And so this will include both the outstanding corrections from wave 1 and location-based corrections. So client location or NC County of Service. We separated those because most of the location questions are kind of self-evident, right? It's all the same response for all the clients. So it's a little bit different than kind of digging through the client file for information. And then wave 3, we're incorporating our system performance measures and looking at long stayers, return to homelessness, and annual assessment issues. And we're really hoping all this will get done by the end of the month. So far, we really appreciate Orange's responses and engagement. I think we're going in a good direction there, so moving right along. We also haven't left you completely alone. We've tried to update this LSA correction guide, which reviews all of these different types of potential issues and the step-by-step instructions for how to correct those. These may also be useful just in general everyday data management. So you'll see in just a little snippet of some detail, we'll have some screenshots and guidance, some internal links and links to training embedded, and then also some context for why this is important and the impact that these issues, errors, or corrections have on the data. All right, so we hope that is a helpful guide for you. That doesn't mean you can't reach out. Please do reach out and let us know what support you need. We're happy to help. In particular, it's helpful to schedule some time to review any questions just because we're all working remotely from the data center, and so it's hard to pick up that phone. Easier to schedule. All right, and then just a heads up too, timelines may change. We're trying to keep to them as much as possible. We've tried to give, a little over a month and a half to review these corrections and make those corrections. But some things can happen to change that. Maybe HUD releases a different sort of date for the submission deadline. Our software vendor, WellSky, has not released the LSA report yet, and depending on that, there could be some additional questions. It might look at the data in a little bit different way than anticipated, but we're using system performance measure data quality reports right now to try to get at all of the different angles of the data that we expect. All right, any questions about that process? This is a really great opportunity to show off our hard work and the impact that we have on clients. With these updates to the LSA report, we're hopeful to be able to use a Stella visualization program from HUD, and that'll help us analyze data with really cool lenses, looking at length of time clients stay in our project by demographic category, whether that's race or age, gender. So anyways, there's some cool stuff that we'd love to be able to show you in maybe even in December if we're able to. We'll see how those timelines sort out. Just as a general tip and kind of reminder of the fundamentals of HMIS, we've been talking about errors or issues with the LSA. I want to remind us that null responses are those responses that will give us a red flag in the system and are considered missing by HUD. So that includes client doesn't know, client refused, and data not collected. Even though the client has the right to not know the information or refuse to give the information, it doesn't give us, the community, information about what's going on with that client. And so that is considered missing. So that is both okay and needs to be balanced with the rest of the clients you're serving. We're trying to err on the side of complete data, although missing data is always better than inaccurate data. So, there's client rights matter. We want to acknowledge that, but we also want to acknowledge that these three different options will result in missing data, and incomplete data can count against our data quality for funding and reporting performance, both at the agency level and the community level. So we do want to acknowledge that and just review what these different responses mean. Oh, let's see, I forgot data not collected. So data not collected is really just about you didn't have the chance to ask the client. The interview was interrupted, or you had page 1 but not page 2 of the paper assessment, or it was just simply forgotten. So that's what data not collected refers to. And then while other responses are not technically null, they also don't give us any additional information. It doesn't tell us, like other for exit destination, it doesn't tell you if it was a positive exit or a negative exit or a neutral exit. It's just not very descriptive. So we do want to avoid other as much as possible. All right, other ways, we're sending you new reports or new issues about once a wave, maybe more frequently. But if you want to look at the fixes you're doing in real time, you can run that APR or CAPR for fiscal years, October to September. I'd recommend just going with fiscal years just because it's a lot of clients to pull in. And we've got guides for that on our HMIS page, ncceh.org/HMIS, and then you can go to training and knowledge and other resources and guides. And it's right by where that housing move-in date guide was that we looked at earlier. All right, I'll pause for a sec. Any questions about how we're cleaning up data, what needs to happen? All right, great. We'll just keep chugging along. All right. So what's next? Just a little aggregation of some resources and reminder. Most of our clients are eligible to vote. It is the season, and this year in particular, there's been some there's been a lot of emphasis on our clients and also our staff, right, ourselves. Making sure that we raise our voice to vote. The National Alliance to End Homelessness and the National Low Income Housing Coalition to, nationally recognized organizations that work for our clients have released toolkits or resources to support voter registration and get out the vote efforts for clients. So I wanted to make sure y'all had seen that, and that's linked here. The National Low Income Housing Coalition has a kind of easy to remember website, Our Homes, Our Vote. And then specifically in North Carolina, this You Can Vote is a nonpartisan voter activation org, and they have a good guide for folks that have been justice involved or locked up. They detail the ways that you're eligible to vote, whether you're in jail awaiting trial or maybe was previously a felon. So good info there. And I think our voter registration deadline is the 9th, so later this week. Just heads up. All right, what does HMIS calendar look like ahead? It is going to be busy. So we've got our ESG CV reports deadline in October, then 2 fiscal years worth of LSA data due in November. We may have a little bit of back and forth with HUD in December. And then, believe it or not, January comes and it is pit night again. So just so you know, we're asking almost every week for more information from HUD about PIT and what they expect us to do. It is anticipated that our sheltered count will go forward, and especially our HMIS count. So from our perspective, going to keep going. But likely, plans will change depending on what they decide for unsheltered folks. And then in March, there's another deadline for the fiscal year 20 system performance measures. Some of that will be looked at and reviewed in the LSA, but we'll take a deeper look and make sure that's all up to date for March. And then, as you can see, PIT and SPM kind of overlap a little bit. It's on our radar. We're going to try to get as much done with system performance measures before PIT night so that those reviews don't overlap too much. Oh, that was a lot of updates. Thanks for bearing with me there and getting started a little bit late. Does anyone have other things they'd like to talk through? I can hang on for a little bit. Any questions? Anything you'd like to see next time? No? Okay. All right. Well, we will keep the updates coming. Do let us know how it feels with those coordinated entry elements. Yeah, October is an exciting month with the CE kind of launching in HMIS. So I'm excited to support y'all in that.
And our next meeting is when?
Our next meeting is the first Monday of November, which is the first Monday in November. Oh, it must be the 2nd. I know that. Yes. On the eve of the election. It'll be exciting. All right.
Will that be a Zoom meeting or a GoToMeeting meeting?
Oh, goodness. I will try to clarify that well in advance. I reserved our GoToMeeting, and it was snatched away from me at the last second, and that's okay because I support my colleagues too. But so we'll try to have it be consistent with that GoToMeeting. And apologies for the last minute changes this time. It'll try to be GoToMeeting.
No problem, Andrew, but I was just in the car and I didn't see, you can fill the rest of it.
Really late notice? Yes, of course.
No, I'm not just,
Yeah, absolutely. We want you here, Tom. So we'll definitely try to get you accurate information.
Thank you so much.
Well in advance.
I feel so welcome.
Good. Good. All right.
And there was a lot of useful stuff here, so thank you.
Good. Good.
All right.
All right. Cool. Well, I hope y'all have a good kind of first full week of October. Hope you're taking care of yourselves as well as clients, and look forward to talking to y'all again soon.
All right.
At least November 2nd.
Thanks, Andrea.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much.